Okay, hi everybody. This is my name's Tom Watson. I'm the CEO of AMI, and I'll be giving the presentation today. I see we've got participants still kind of connecting here, and I appreciate everybody being here. These things are totally awkward doing conferences online where I can't see anybody. I'm staring at my face there, but I miss seeing everybody in the real world. Can't wait to get into a room with you all again and have a few drinks and talk about this stuff live. I miss you all. Asset management, what we're going to talk about today is what we call Blackbelt asset management, and it's about a methodology to define KPIs to measure the performance of asset management to really help us sell hardware asset management to the business. Little bit of background, AMI, we've been doing hardware asset management. Our 18-year anniversary is this month, like any day now. And we've been a hardware asset tracking solution provider for years. We've worked with some of the largest enterprises in the world to help them mature their hardware asset management solutions built on ServiceNow, HP Asset Manager, CA Asset Portfolio Management back in the day. And over the course of working with these enterprises, we've gleaned a lot. Like, I didn't make up any of this stuff that I'm going to show today. It's all stuff that we've gleaned working with some really mature hardware asset managers over the years. So I can't really take credit for a lot of this stuff, but I have the pleasure of working with some really great people, and hopefully this stuff helps. I think you've been doing this for a couple of days now, so you know to chat questions. I've got my phone down there ready to take questions at any time, so please fire away. So the purpose of, when we get started in an asset management solution, it's kind of important to understand where companies sit in their IT asset management maturity. And you've probably seen scales like this before. This is ours, moving from, we're not doing anything up to we are reacting to events and scrambling to collect data and spending a lot of energy, and we don't really have a proactive system, up to proactive, where organizations have implemented. This is where most companies that we work with are but before we start getting into KPIs and measuring performance, we need to first get companies up to that proactive stage where they have a controlled process for managing their asset data. They've implemented automation tools that make the process of managing that data efficient. They've achieved data accuracy. They've got their processes running efficiently. They've achieved their audit compliance. And once companies kind of get to that level, which is where most people kind of think they want to go, they think that's kind of the end of the road. But what we really want to do is try to step up to a real strategic partner. As an asset management organization, how do we become a strategic partner to the business? And we've heard a lot of that jargon, and I speak enough jargon too, but what I'm hoping to do is kind of take you through some steps by which you could define some real specific and tangible KPIs that you could track and measure to demonstrate value to the business. And that gets you to that strategic level where you're starting to use analytics and historical data to identify trends in how you handle assets and what your performance, your process efficiency is and will be, how to forecast what your spend is going to be in the future. So you can start to do things like adjust your stock levels without impacting availability, and just demonstrate that you're maximizing warranties and holding vendors accountable by using data that you can surface in the form of dashboards to the business. That's that strategic place that we want to get to. You can't just do that overnight, though. There's some foundational stuff that we have to do. When we talk about becoming a strategic partner within the business and selling asset management to executive leadership, we've got to talk about business goals. And I always start with the core goals of IT asset management. there's 4 categories: compliance being your table stakes driver for doing asset management. Your organizations that are audited by internal or external service providers, you have to do asset management just to comply, or you'll get fired. And, you know, like I said, we've been doing this for 18 years, and, you know, the first 10 of them, you know, companies were just trying to satisfy audits. And that's kind of the most, you know, the base driver for asset management. It's also the most boring, in my opinion, because again, it's just like, how do we not get fired? The next is savings. This is where you can start to get interest from executives, where if you can demonstrate that you're saving the company money in terms of reducing your asset spend, reducing maintenance contracts, taxes, insurance. Savings is obviously a second big driver for organizations. Savings isn't just about dollars, it's about time savings and labor savings, driving efficiencies in processes as well. Savings is, although an important goal, it cannot come at the expense of the third goal, which is availability. The business has to have the assets on hand in order for the operations to continue and to be competitive in the marketplace. So you can't just cut spending if you're going to impact availability. So ensuring that we've got the stuff on hand that we need is a third key driver. And then more recently, security has become a driver for hardware asset management. You know, obviously with the increase in threats, you can't just rely on network detection software and network discovery. You've got to have accurate information about your physical footprint in order to properly secure the network. So hardware asset management is now a feed or a data feed that helps support a security play. So we want to start there with understanding the root level goals. And then from there, we can start to build our, lay the foundation, which we can then use to track and manage KPIs to demonstrate value to the business. All of asset management starts with data. So I just like to start by identifying, 4 key categories, sources of data that we have to factor into our asset management platform, upon which we're going to build our KPI tracking. The financial data of your purchasing information, your catalog, your model categories, et cetera, your vendor data, your advanced ship notices from your sourcing vendors, your disposal certificates from your disposal vendors, any services updates coming from services vendors. You've got your network discovery data, obviously collecting data of equipment attached to the network, and then any physical tracking data that you have at the receiving dock, or any physical audit tools that you have. These 4 data sources have to be integrated and aligned, and there needs to be a process for reconciling exceptions when financial records don't match with vendor records, which don't match with discovery records, which don't match with discovery records. Part of reconciling those 4 data feeds and identifying exceptions is going to be one of the base KPIs that mature organizations use to demonstrate the health of asset management. So data, or the content, is the foundational piece that we have to get under control, well-defined and under control. And around that, we need to establish control, or process control, for how that data is manipulated. So as new assets are introduced into your database, as assets are stocked and deployed and serviced and then retired and disposed, and disposal information is collected, there must be a controlled process for how that data is updated. Everything needs to be logged. There cannot be wild processes out there modifying your data. You've got to control it, otherwise you will lose confidence in that data, and that'll break your whole foundation upon which you're going to start to generate KPIs. Our data capture layer, that's automation tools. So ensuring that the processes that your users and your systems execute are efficient. That's what we talk about, bringing in RFID technologies, network discovery, reconciliation tools, things that automate the data capture process to ensure that that data can be kept up to date and current. The reconciliation wraps around that, because stuff, like I said, isn't going to align There must be processes for reconciling exceptions that you have to factor into your foundational program, so that, you know, when receipts don't match purchase orders and advanced ship notices don't match receiving records, stockroom audits discover missing assets, end user certification tools that you deploy out to remote workers generate disputed assets that have gone missing. There must be reconciliation work done to reconcile those exceptions and get those closed out. Once you have all of that established, your core data feed, your controlled process, your automated data capture, and your reconciliation processes to solve exceptions, those four become that proactive stage, that proactive maturity level, where you can be confident that the current picture of your asset information is accurate, and any reports you run on real-time data can be trusted. That's a great place to get. There's a ton of value there. But jump into that strategic level, that's where we start to use our historical data to identify our past performance to predict the future. So on top of all this, we want to ensure that you've got a tool and a process to capture asset historical information that has time-based analytics in it that you can use to monitor and measure the performance of asset management over time. And I'm going to get into kind of some of those specific KPIs that use historical data to demonstrate ways that we can to show you ways that you can demonstrate concrete value to the business. But I just want to make sure we understand this foundation. You can't just jump to measuring KPIs without establishing and building the proper foundation. Okay, so measuring KPIs, you know, asset management is more process than it is technology. And from this point forward, what I'm going to show here is not prescriptive. This meaning this isn't exactly how you have to define your asset lifecycle. These are not, when I move to the next slides, these are not the exact KPIs that you have to measure. Some may be of less value than others. What I'm moving forward, from this point forward, we are providing a methodology for identifying KPIs that are relevant to your business. And of course, some of these are some that you could just run with and establish. But my point is here, you could argue, I've seen different life cycle stages. This is just our choice of how to categorize the asset life cycle so that we can then dive deeper into each one of these process areas to define and extract the KPIs that we want to track. So we define it in terms of planning, you know, what you're going to buy, acquiring the stuff, getting it in-house, deploying the equipment out into use, maintaining that equipment while it's in use, and then retiring it and getting it out of here. There's different subtasks to each one of these categories, of course, but those are the 5 areas that we're going to use today to provide a framework for KPI definition. So the next step here in terms of what are the KPIs that are relevant to the business that are going to demonstrate value to the business. We recommend the use of the critical to quality process portion of Six Sigma. You know, we're not talking about a full Black Belt Six Sigma process here. We like to steal components of Six Sigma when we implement these solutions. And one of them that's key is the critical to quality method of identifying KPIs. So what we've got here, the primary goal is hardware asset management maturity, demonstrating value to the business. And by breaking those hardware lifecycle into 5 key process areas, again, you could define them indifferently, but you know, give them different names, it doesn't matter. But the point is, within each one of those process areas, you need to look at those processes from the customer's point of view. The customer being an end user, a business stakeholder, an executive, the customers of asset management. It's not about the technicians or the asset managers themselves, but the business, the people that are consuming the asset management data and evaluating the performance of the asset management system. we work a lot with asset managers and technicians, and they care about certain things like automation and efficiencies and kind of control of their world. The business cares less about that. They're talking about getting value out of asset management. So the critical to quality, that is from the viewpoint of a customer in asset management. If we take each one of our asset lifecycle process categories, what is critical to quality from the customer's perspective? So you'll see here, I've broken it down, and these are examples. There are more than one critical to quality factor for each one of these process areas. And there are more KPIs that will come from each one of those critical to quality areas. This is just a thin slice to demonstrate the methodology. So when we look at planning, organizations that we've worked with, they talk about their purchase mix, which is the categories of assets they procure, and to ensure that they're purchasing equipment and assets that have maximum value to the business. And so when we're planning of what we're going to purchase, we want to make sure that we're driving our purchases more towards acquiring the technology of the future, planning to acquire the technology that we're going to get the most use out of. So from the customer's point of view, the stakeholder, the executive's point of view, the value of the assets that are purchased are what's critical. So if value is important, then what do we measure when we're planning? When we're looking at our forecasted spend, we want to look at the mix of categories of assets that we're purchasing. And what I'm going to show you later is the percentage of assets that are purchased for projects, one-time initiatives, versus refresh or standard operations. Assets that are purchased for projects are typically minimum value because the dreams of reissuing and reusing those assets never comes to fruition, and those assets get minimum value. So in terms of the planning process, we want to measure the value of our planned assets as we procure them. When we move to acquisition, a critical to quality item is speed. As an end user, I want my stuff to show up right away. That's what success of the acquisition process looks like from a customer point of view. So the KPI that we've identified that proves that value is order to deploy time. How quickly do we get the equipment on the desk of an end user that requests equipment? When we move to the deploy phase, the driver is primarily, there's multiple critical to quality items. One of them is savings, which boils down to, are we using the assets that we have? Are we carrying too high of stock levels? What's our utilization rate? If we are effectively deploying equipment, that means that our utilization is high, which means that we're not over purchasing. It demonstrates to the business that we're saving money. Get that utilization high up, the utilization percentage as high as you can without impacting availability, and you can prove to the business that you are saving money and not over purchasing. When we look to maintenance, security is a critical quality. We need to ensure that the assets that are discoverable assets are on the network and they're detected. And what percentage of those assets are detected demonstrates to the business our level of control and our ability to secure those assets that are on the network. We also I've also split out data accuracy here as we perform regular audits of our stock rooms, of our in-use assets. Our accuracy percentages over time demonstrate to the business that our processes are under control and that we have accurate data with which to secure our networks. The last example here of retiring equipment, our critical to quality driver is compliance. The executive and the business wants to understand that our risk is minimal and that we're compliant with all regulations. And that means that we have proper documentation coming back from our disposal vendors, and we want to measure our compliance with that. We want to understand what is the percentage of disposed assets that are properly documented. I've listed that here as our exception percentage. You know, we want that to be as low as possible, or really our documentation rate to be as high as possible. Again, it doesn't matter whether you're um, measuring exceptions and you're trying to hit a low number, or whether you're trying to measure documentation accuracy, you want to hit a high number. That's almost irrelevant. What's more relevant is that the business understands the importance of that KPI and what the target PAR level is, or what the target level is, so that you can demonstrate that, hey, we are delivering compliance via our hardware asset management. The way I can demonstrate that to you is 100% or 99% or better compliance with our disposal records. So again, this is not prescriptive. This is the methodology, the way of thinking about how to develop KPIs by using this critical to quality viewpoint. Let's flip it from what does asset management care about to what does the business care about, and make sure that the KPI that we measure demonstrates that value proposition to the business. So here's a collection of KPIs that we use as a benchmark for sort of out-of-the-box implementations that we think are relevant, that are helpful and give a pretty decent measurement of asset management health at an enterprise. I've just merged planning and acquiring just to make it fit better on the screen here. But in the acquisition phase, we like to measure model consolidation. By reducing the amount of models, we have identified that we can better manage equipment, we can get better prices, we can better maintain, provide better service times, maintain less stock levels, have higher utilization by maintaining lesser stock without impacting availability. So model consolidation is a key KPI for our acquisition phase. The purpose mix, like I said, are we procuring assets for refresh or for operations, or are we procuring assets for projects? And we want to drive that project number down. Purchasing equipment from projects has bad reuse. Companies always dream of repurposing equipment, but they never do. So stuff ends up lingering, and not that they never do, but it just becomes much harder to do than acquiring for refresh or operational purposes. Of course, delivery time, you want to know that your vendors are delivering equipment efficiently and getting your users up and running. And then receipt accuracy, ensuring that all of the equipment that vendors are sending or indicating that they're sending are being properly received. And measuring the percentage of receipt accuracy is a key driver to ensure that you're registering equipment correctly, you're maximizing warranties, and you are not paying for invoices for equipment that's never been received. When we move to the deploy phase, stock dwell time is the hot topic for our customers these days. Our mature businesses want to ensure that they're maximizing warranties. When stuff comes in, if it sits in stock, you're not getting value out of it. It needs to get deployed, or it's burning into its warranty without delivering value to the business. If assets are dwelling in stock, then that means you can reduce your purchasing. You have too much stuff. So stock dwell time is a key indicator of your delivery process and your utilization numbers, and can be a great predictor in terms of what your purchasing requirements will be in the future. Inventory accuracy is a key one as well, to identify process errors or process compliance. You know, we mentioned that asset management is built on data, wrapped with a controlled process, with automation tools and reconciliation processes. Consistently monitoring your inventory accuracy and tracking those KPI, that percentage over time, forecasts problems. You can see if your inventory accuracy is degrading, you will be able to measure where in your organization that's happening. And you can get in front of process control problems before accuracy degrades to a point where it's not, not something that where process breakdowns happen to degrade quality to where it's going to impact availability, and people are going to be sitting there, new employees are going to be sitting there without equipment in their hands for 2 weeks. How many times, how many of you had an employee show up, and it's like standard for them to be there for 2 weeks before they get their computer. I'm getting some question. I got one question here. Stock dwell time, it's been such a driver for us, but how does that look now that analysts are targeting just-in-time manufacturing accounts for some of the global supply chain issues we're experiencing? That's a good question. I can't intelligently answer how to handle the current, supply chain crisis due to COVID. That's a little bit above my pay grade. Analysts are targeting just-in-time manufacturing, but that works when you have manufacturers that can produce equipment just in time. So I don't have a perfect answer to that one, but you're going to have to, by understanding dwell time and your consumption rate and factoring in your delivery time, that's going to give you some dials with which to analyze, what stock you need to carry on hand. Just in time is great, but like you're saying here, Ruxton, you're going to have to anticipate absorbing a little of that waste just to maintain inventory, to have the same reliability we had pre-COVID. That's absolutely right. But you're yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's not about perfection here. It's about having reliable, accurate information that you can use to turn dials and react to things like a chip shortage. You do have to then kind of bolster your stock in order to prep for that. But if you don't know what your stock dwell time is, you don't know what your delivery times are, you can't properly balance those. You can't react to things like supply chain shortages. So you'll see I've got in-use percentage as well. That's kind of related. Having your utilization rate is a key indicator to understand what stock levels you need. An SLA compliance, this is your service organization in terms of getting the equipment deployed to users. You can have stuff on hand. If your services organization is unable to efficiently get those delivered and installed, that's going to impact customer satisfaction at the deploy time as well. So by SLA compliance, I mean, just your standard ITSM delivery compliance. And that's arguably not ITAM, as I say that, but it's a key indicator, of services requests. And then process errors. This is just something that AMI just implements typically is logging process exceptions as your users and technicians and asset managers and warehouse personnel and auditors are following your processes and collecting data. This doesn't really just apply to deploy. It's kind of it should be really on each one of the stages in the life cycle here. I've kind of got it linked in deploy, but that's not exactly limited there. But by recording transactions and detecting exceptions and logging information about your processes for collecting and updating data, you can identify and get in front of process errors that impact other KPIs. So that's what we mean there by process errors. Make sure your technicians and your staff and your systems are making updates to asset information accurately, because that kind of throws everything else out the window. In terms of maintenance, a key one is on and off network, meaning we want to compare assets that are considered in use from your asset management process. Again, assuming you've got a process in place to properly mark assets in use when they're deployed to a user, which that's getting to that proactive stage. If you have trust in that process, then you can use the in-use state in your asset management database to correlate and compare against discovery data. So a key KPI is the percentage of assets that are marked in use, but we can't find them on the network. So that's reconciling your tracking data with your discovery data and coming up with a percentage of accuracy of in use but off network. And then the flip of that, what's on the network but is not marked in use. That could be assets. Those could be rogue assets that aren't in the repository at all, that haven't, where did those come from? Are they contractor equipment? Is it rogue? Is it counterfeit? Some freaky stuff with counterfeit equipment happening out there that, I don't know if it's public, yet, but anyway, out in the, when the equipment's deployed, we want to be, reconciling that discovery data to your in-use data to ensure that you've got network discoverability of the stuff that's out in the field. And then our maintenance SLAs, when you're using vendors to service equipment, track those turnaround times and track that by vendor, so that you can hold those vendors accountable. You can recover penalty SLAs, et cetera. Retirement, pre-disposal time, just how much, how long are assets hanging around before they're sent to your disposal vendor. You want to keep that to a minimum, or it's a security risk. Stuff can walk out the door. That's a perfect time for theft because nobody's looking for those assets and nobody's looking to use them. So we want to keep that pre-disposal time down to a reasonable target. Your ITAD vendor should also be getting that equipment sanitized, disposed of, and documentation returned. And that's the last, so that ITAD turnaround time to measure your ITAD vendor. And then of course your documentation percentage. You've got to have, high percentage documentation in order to hold those disposal vendors accountable. So I'm just a few of these, just a way to kind of describe some of these. I'm not going to go through every single one of those KPIs, but this is just, taking out our project mix. It's just a way to articulate it that we find important. That, we identified that in the acquisition phase, what's critical to quality is acquiring valuable assets. And I've categorized those into project versus refresh assets. Refresh get the maximum use of life. Projects get the minimum, unless they're reused, which is a dream. And, a quote here from an asset manager, when we purchase new laptops for projects, we're often bad at getting those back into available stock. And you end up with a stockpile of laptops. We want to drive that down. But we also then, the KPI is projected spend by work stream. And then the goal is to maximize refresh, minimize project. But what's the business value to that? We can maximize the utilization of our assets by repurposing existing assets for projects and ensure that that's actually the wrong thing. I typed that and I didn't QC it here. We're not trying to repurpose assets. We're trying to maximize refresh so that we're maximizing utilization by minimizing assets that are difficult to redeploy. So that's an error in my slide deck. I apologize there. But you get the point, I think. And for deploy time, this particular KPI of turnaround time, we want assets to be deployed within 10 days of order. It's not 10 is a variable. You set your KPI, you set your, you set your par levels, you set your numbers. The important thing is to set a target and track your compliance with that target so you know how you're trending and if you're meeting that goal. So deployed turnaround time, the business value is increased productivity. We don't want new employees sitting there for 2 weeks without a computer, pretty simply. We also had, an asset manager here. They had to maintain, for executives, they had such a poor turnaround time, they had to maintain multiple, they had to stage and deploy multiple assets just to get these executives happy. And it's just ridiculous overwaste that could be avoided if they had proper if they're tracking their turnaround time and they held their vendors accountable for that. Stock dwell time, we've already kind of covered this. In this example, you could change your target. One key enterprise that we kind of really gleaned this from was using 60 days as their dwell time target. Again, it doesn't matter what the target is as long as you're targeting something and measuring it. And the business value is to reduce our refresh and services costs by maximizing warranties, and to also be able to reduce our stock levels by understanding our utilization. We can limit the number of assets that we carry on stock if we understand what our deployment rates are and what our availability requirements are. Deployed assets on the network, we want 99% or better the discoverability of those in-use assets. But anyway, I'm not going through all of these here. I just want to, we're really talking, I am going to share this slide deck, by the way. you can contact me. I'm going to come back to, you can keep firing away questions. I'm going to show you a dashboard tool here that we built, but and I'll come back to this, but you can always contact me directly. I'll be happy to share this slide deck. The ITAM review folks are going to, they're going to make this slide deck available for download as well. I've tweaked it a little bit since then, so I can send you a live copy of it. So just reach out to me directly, please. tom.watson@amitracks.com. Our company is Asset Track. Anyway, and I'll come back to this in a moment, so you can copy down my my information. But I do want to just kind of demonstrate, kind of how to visualize this thing here. So AMI makes the product that we make is sorry, my thing timed out here for this like quick and dirty demo. AMI, we're popular for doing barcode and RFID automation tools. We're really strong in the ServiceNow market. We work with other products as well, but our focus has been hardware lifecycle automation. And more recently, we've tried to take these KPIs and create a solution that can help visualize this, make some of this KPI measurement possible using historical trend and duration data. And we've got the ability to surface that information in dashboards. Again, I didn't invent, we built this tool, but we didn't invent this concept. We've gleaned this from clients that built this similar stuff with Tableau, using data that they collected, using tracking data that we provided. They did their own timing and collected their own historical trend information. So this isn't about a specific product. It's really about the end result that we can deliver to clients, or that you could deliver to clients and surface in terms of dashboards. So, we've got our I'm working through the plan, acquire, deploy, manage, and retire stages of the life cycle. And what I'm demonstrating here is, over a period of time, month by month, what was the project versus refresh compared to a par level here. So you identify what your projected targets for refresh versus project are, and measure against those, and then calculate your delta. And you can see that, hey, we had an increase in product. We're over our project target, but we brought it back down and we've compensated for it. So we had some excessive projects, and then it's, but the point is to be able to plot these out over time. When we surface these to acquisition, this is just a visualization of a 21-day delivery time. What's our compliance with we want to guarantee to the business that equipment is delivered within 21 days of order. What's our compliance with that SLA over time? This is a visualization setting 85% as the par target level, 70% as our take action level. And what that means is that an agreement to the business is if we've exceeded 85% compliance with that SLA, then we're golden. We don't have to act. If we're in between those targets, this is something that could be reviewed. If our acquisition SLA dips into the 80%, this is something we want to take action on. But if we dip below our crisis threshold or our take action threshold, this now indicates to the business that action must be taken. We've exceeded the threshold of our acquisition delivery times. And we carry this to other factors as well, or these other KPIs. Just this is another way to visualize this. Here's our stock dwell time here. By aggregating historical time data, tracking the time and duration of assets in stock, you can plot this over time, and you can see that, hey, we were fine, we were doing great, and our dwell time started to exceed, and then all of a sudden, boom, we've really exceeded it. We had to take action. We got it back under control, and we've been bringing that stock dwell time. This isn't the time of stock dwell time. This is our compliance with getting assets turned around within 60 days. What's the percentage of time we've been able to do that? So there's more here. This is just one visualization tool that's available, that is available for the ServiceNow solution. It's built on top of the Asset Track product that we provide that does some timing and historical data for you. that's a little bit of our sales pitch there, but hopefully this is helpful. Again, we didn't crib, we didn't invent these concepts. We identified, really what the key KPIs are. More important is the methodology for how do you define your KPIs, and then hopefully you can build that foundation of confidence in data, so that you can then track historical data with timing information that you can use. Then you can use whatever reporting and visualization tool you have at your disposal. So yeah, that's all I got for you today. I'm sorry we couldn't meet in person. I hear the next conference is going to be in St. Petersburg on the beach for ITAM review. Is what Karen told me right before this. So I look forward to hitting that and having a drink with y'all. Please reach out, ask questions, ask for my slide deck. And I appreciate your time. And again, it's this weird saying goodbye to kind of an empty room. I can't wait to see you guys all in the real world. Thank you very much. Take care, everybody.